These emails are saying very clearly that it's pointing towards, this is a year and almost a half ago, that this was intentionally created by a lab which the United States was helping to fund.
In January of 2020, he's getting reports sent to him from his colleagues in the scientific community saying, you look at the sequences here and the features look engineered. This same person, Kristian Andersen, goes on to say, believe the genome is inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory, aka it's not jumping from an animal. It is why, as Senator Marco Rubio has pointed out, that animal link has not been found. And in the past, they were found within months because the world wanted to know what was the cause of this. How do we prevent this?
The evidence is going to show that this was definitely engineered by a lab in the Wuhan Virology Institute, probably, no question about it, funded by the United States, which makes it doubly abhorrent to me, and that it was transmitted by the Chinese either through negligence or, in my view, intentionality to their own population, regardless of what was going to happen to their own population, Dr. Fauci notwithstanding, saying they wouldn't do this to their own population. Nonsense. Of course they would.
4 or 5 months later, definitive statements from Fauci that all of his friends must be totally wrong, even though they're looking at the genomic sequencing and saying there's no way this was created. This went from an animal to a human.
The mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human.
This could not have been artificially or deliberately manipulated, the way the mutations have naturally evolved.
It's the leading theory, Rick, that this was lab created and that Dr. Fauci was learning about this from his colleagues before this was even declared a pandemic in the United States.
If you go back to the DNI website, April 30th, 2020, there is a statement from the entire intelligence community. An intelligence community-wide statement is extremely rare. And in that statement, we make very clear that this started in China and it's either in the lab or in the wet markets. And we briefed reporters to say the lab leak is the leading hypothesis. This is where our intelligence community is going. This is what they are investigating. And since then, of course, the people in Washington who just protect the ruling party, the Democrats, have completely changed their tune. And yet I can attest to the fact we told Washington Post reporters, CNN reporters, New York Times reporters of this exact lab leak theory, and they ignored it because it didn't fit into their politics at the time.
I think that the only explanation for his definitiveness is that he must be making money from China because it's on, and there's some reason why he's protecting the Chinese government and this lab.
We're in discussions, which will end up in court, with the current administration to find out why they shut down these investigations.
Secretary Pompeo had started an investigation as to what was going on in the Wuhan lab and our funding of it and so forth. And suddenly the Biden administration cuts that out and suspends it. Why? What's there to hide? Why don't you want to know what the facts are?
One of the very specific things that we're asking for in this FOIA is why did this administration suspend the investigation started by Secretary Pompeo to investigate this lab leak? We all know now that it is the most likely scenario. And quite frankly, anybody that looked at it seriously knew that it was a very high probability from the beginning. The last administration was looking into it. Jay, we want to know why this administration suspended it because, quite frankly, even if it ended up not to be the case, not investigating it to a conclusion, that is totally irresponsible.
The Democrats have a chance to lead the world. Imagine if the Democratic Party would just completely change now and say, we see the evidence. We see that the Chinese not only were responsible for this, but what they did to the rest of the world in hiding it, that the cover up is really the economic devastation that we need to be focused on.
We're focusing on not who had a mask or who did not have a mask and whether he knew we shouldn't have, the masks were helpful or not helpful. Put that all aside. I'm looking at the political ramifications and the geopolitical ramifications.